Hi, it is Anika from Living for Later, and I want to talk today about communication in marriage for this Marriage Monday episode. Communication is huge in any relationship. If there's not effective communication, then it greatly compromises the quality of the relationship. And in marriage, if we're not talking to each other, it just becomes a hot mess. So the first point that I want to talk to you about is just this thought that there should be no speaking until there is feasting. And you must be like, what are you talking about? Until you have spent time feasting on God, speaking to Him, being in His presence, you should not try to have conversations about difficult things with your spouse. Because if you do, you are going to be operating in the flesh and not the spirit. So here's a natural analogy for you. How many of you have ever been hungry before and people are trying to have conversation with you, or you have something that you need to share with someone? When you're hungry, you're often irritable, you're annoyed, it's hard for you to really focus on what someone is saying. You're just thinking as their mouth is moving, hurry up, get through what you want to say, because I want to go and eat my chicken, right? So you can be very short, your stomach is growling. Well, it is the same. When we haven't spent time feasting on Jesus, who is known as the bread of life, when we haven't spent that time in prayer, talking and communicating with Him, it can make for just a disaster when you go and you try to speak to your spouse. So the first thing that I want to say is, do not go and speak to your spouse until you have first spoken to God. Because again, it's just going to be a disaster. When you spend that time in the presence of God, talking to Him, especially if it's something difficult that you have to communicate to your spouse, it's just helpful when you first spend that time with God, because it helps to take some of the edge off of what you want to say. So you bring your raw emotions to God, you tell Him how you're really feeling, and after you've given that to Him and you go and you speak to your spouse, the edge is taken off because you first given it to God, so you're not dumping it on them. Yes, you still communicate what's on your heart, but the way you communicate it, if you've been in prayer, is totally different, and you're not as much of a emotional just mess and just impatient and just, oh, I'm just gonna tell you. Oh, you're more operating in the spirit as opposed to the flesh when you first spent that time with the Lord. So no speaking until you have been feasting. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Marriage Monday. I hope that it blessed you. On the next episode, we're going to continue talking about communication, and I am going to highlight the point that timing is everything. So I hope that this blessed you, and if it did, I encourage you to just share this video with other married people, or even someone that's looking to get married. It's always good to learn about this stuff before getting into marriage, and even when you are in marriage, it's helpful to be reminded of these things. All right, you be blessed.